Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. Up first here, heavy rains as forecast moved back onto the North Gulf Coast areas, with Montague Island picking up 7.5 inches in the last 24 hours. 24-hour period ending at 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Yakutat, just under 3 inches there with 2.8 inches, and Portage Glacier, kind of just really for that area, a run-of-the-mill rainfall for 24 hours, 2.25 inches. And Cordova picking up 1.8 inches. And that's all tending to diminish now, with the main bulk of the moisture pushing on off to the north and to the northeast, and also pulling back to the northwest. Excuse me. On the hazardous weather graphic, there are winter weather advisories out for the McGrath area, the lower mid-Yukon Valley, northern Kuskokwim actually here, left that out. Should include McGrath and Nikolai area and Galena. That's out for tomorrow for possible mixed precipitation in the form of freezing rain. Rainfall or precipitation amounts won't be all that significant, but have the advisories out due to the nature of the type, which is, again, sleet or freezing rain, kind of a wintry mix. And then winter weather advisories here out for the central eastern interior. These are out through Tuesday as moisture lifting north will kind of persist in this area. It could bring several inches of snow. Actually, some areas could see 4 to 8 inches by Tuesday afternoon here. And that whole mass of moisture is slowly shifting up to the north. And there are also winter weather advisories out for the eastern Alaska range as well. Winter weather advisories have ended for the Copper River Basin, and the winter storm warning has also ended for the Thompson Pass area after picking up about a foot of snow with that heavy moisture coming in from the south, but warm temperatures now rising the freezing levels, snowfall levels going up, and seeing rainfall, of course, back in toward Anchorage. Still have the Sitna Valley advisory out until about midnight tonight, as then it should be mostly in the form of rain, even down at the lowest elevations there in the Susitna Valley. Otherwise, we had some rain into the Panhandle today, but the heaviest amounts again along the North Gulf Coast and roughly Elfin Cove back in toward the south central Alaska area. Anchorage picking up anywhere from 3/4 to a little over an inch of rain in the Anchorage, south central Alaska area today. And for the southwest interior, Bristol Bay, seeing mixture precipitation here, but lighter amounts, really the front kind of breaking up as it hits the Aleutian Range, or the moisture crossing the mountain ranges there, really breaking up, so the amounts not all that heavy back through this area, dry up over the northwest, and chilly with gusty northeast winds coming down. High wind warning out, I forgot to mention that, out for St. Lawrence Island through tomorrow, for tonight, through tomorrow for northeast winds continuing to increase, expected to get up around 60 miles an hour later tonight, and that'll continue through the day tomorrow. Currently, Gamble, at least mid-afternoon today, seeing gusts 40, 45 miles an hour or so, and even stronger winds occurred down here over the Pribilofs. They saw at St. George, St. Pauline, where gusts 60 to near 70 miles an hour at St. George Island, and currently this afternoon, Adak 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts down there, while the southwest coast seeing winds in the 35 to 45 mile per hour range. And Augustine Island seeing northeast winds gusting to 52 miles per hour this afternoon. And putting this through again, you can see the warmer air changing the snowfall to rain over the Pribilof Islands, and mostly rainfall occurring down into the central Aleutians here. Some of that warmer air wraps back in around. And of course, milder air here over Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. Chillier though, up through the Bering Strait and up over the northwest interior, dry and continued chilly. And temperatures still below freezing across the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta areas today, as well as up into the interior of the state. And on the chart, you can see roughly at mid-afternoon the position of this front. The occluded front cutting across northern Bristol Bay, up past Kodiak Island now. Rain still occurring, but beginning to taper off and should end here. You can see some drier air in the southeast flow about to make landfall there. And then the heavy rain, as I mentioned, along the North Gulf Coast, and lighter amounts in across the Panhandle, kind of high pressure over British Columbia, directing most of that up to the north and northwest. So really not much at all reaching the southern areas there. But moisture spreading northward. Again, about 4 to 8 inches of snow earlier today falling across the areas of the Copper River Basin, Foote and Thompson Pass, and that moisture now pushing up into the eastern interior, upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, but dry. Central interior back to the west. A few snow showers over the Seward Peninsula, mostly on the north shore. And the north slope seeing areas of light snow, and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Quite a widespread area of light snow and patchy fog there occurring this afternoon, but again, mounts quite light. And back to the west, dries out here over the far western Bering Sea with high pressure ridging from Russia down across that area. You can see the tight pressure gradient between that ridge and then the low center here just to the south, keeping those storm force winds in the forecast tonight for the eastern Bering and the central Aleutians. And for tonight, you can see low center here, just actually almost on top of Unalaska. Tight gradient, northeast winds, storm force winds, gales and storms here from the Bering Strait all the way down into the central Aleutians. Lighter winds southeast, milder conditions, rain still moderate here on the upslope areas of the Alaska Peninsula. Showers Kodiak Island, frontal boundary right through here, so still moderate amounts of rain occurring for the North Gulf Coast. Heavy at times, Cordova eastward to Yakutat, and then lightening up considerably into the Panhandle. And then the moisture up over the eastern interior in the form of rain or snow or areas of freezing rain, and then several inches of snow on up farther to the north, but staying dry back here to the west and quite windy there for the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound area, as well as the Yukon Delta, and actually breezy conditions right up, especially the higher elevations, Indian Mountain, and through the passes of the Berks Range. Otherwise, north of the mountains, areas of light snow continue from eastern Beaufort Sea coast on out to the west. And then the outlook for Monday, tomorrow, Veterans Day, observed Veterans Day. Another system pushing up to the north here brings an increase in the wind and rain again late in the afternoon here in across the Gulf of Alaska, and then eventually into the North Gulf Coast after maybe something of a break early tomorrow during the morning into midday about that, but should be mostly fair here over the southeast coast. Cloudy skies maybe breaking out to partly and mostly sunny early in the day over the southern areas, but definitely dry. And the rain mostly from maybe Haines, Elfin Cove back to the west again, pushing in toward the afternoon hours. And then this boundary up through here, mixture of rain or snow, south side of that front, north side staying in the form of snow. Again, the winter weather advisories out through tomorrow here for the northeast interior. And some light snow persists along the north slope to the north side of the Berks Range. And then for Tuesday, boundary stationary here, so the snow persists and those winter weather advisories continue. Looks like the heaviest amounts will be north of the White Mountains and across the upper Yukon Valley. And just snow showers and flurries really tapers off back here to the southwest into the lower and mid Yukon River Valley area. Should be dry in the Kuskokwim Valley. Maybe some flurries here along the coast. Areas of rain or rain and snow showers for Bristol Bay coming back into the Alaska Peninsula area and also out over the Aleutians. Snow showers pretty widespread and stays wet for the North Gulf Coast, but not as wet and not as windy. Better chance of showers now in across the Panhandle. Lows for tonight, upper 30s, lower 40s for the Panhandle, a little below zero from the eastern Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. Lows quite mild under southerly flow here, upper 30s to mid 40s, south central Alaska to Kodiak Island, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, single numbers, Brooks Range to the Arctic coast, and teens to mid 20s in the central interior. Mild 40s, southern Alaska south of the Alaska Range, mid to upper 40s there for the southeast coast, mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians. Right around 40 for the Pribilof Islands, right around the frost point there for St. Lawrence Island. Taking a look at Tuesday morning's lows, we've got near zero there for the upper Yukon Valley, a little above there for the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley, and 5 to 10 below Brooks Range to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, actually all of the Arctic coast up there. And still mild on the lows, upper 30s for the lows here, southern Alaska, to near 40 or into the lower 40s for Kodiak, mid 40s here along the North Gulf Coast, and upper 30s, lower 40s, quite mild there for the Panhandle as well as the Aleutians. Highs in the afternoon shaping up like this, should be near or above zero. Brooks Range on out to the coast there with teens, a little chillier in through the central interior for those highs. Upper teens, lower 20s now for the Tanana Valley area, but still upper 30s to near 40. A little cooler here for southern Alaska, but mid 40s Kodiak, mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, warmest in the south, and the Aleutians mostly in the lower 40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, marginal VFR, Bering Sea and the Aleutians. We've got IFR off the southwest coast here, right into Kuskokwim Bay, and more IFR in over the Kuskokwim Mountains and the Kuskokwim Valley, more or less there, on up to the northeast, in toward the Greater Eagle area. Then VFR back here to the north and northwest, Seward Peninsula, looking good tomorrow morning. IFR north slope to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Lots of IFR here, Gulf of Alaska, right up to the coastline, Prince William Sound to Kodiak, along the western Alaska range. And for afternoon, pretty good here for the Panhandle, mostly VFR, marginal right off the coast. IFR, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, Barren Islands, most of Kodiak, especially on the north and east side of things. IFR persisting here, maybe a little better along the Alaska range, but Talkeetna Mountains and the central Alaska range are still pretty much in the IFR zone. 40-mile country to maybe the upper Tanana Valley, breaking out the VFR, then back into the IFR, White Mountains up across the upper Yukon. And lowest conditions again back toward the southwest coast. No change for the Bering Sea. And from Tuesday morning, still persistent area IFR up there over the north slope. IFR along the border, upper Yukon Valley down into the Tanana Valley, and then all the way down here across the Talkeetnas, Denali Highway area in toward, well, it looks like Passage Canal. The most of Prince William Sound looks pretty marginal. IFR northern Panhandle, otherwise marginal, gradually improving to the south. Again, no change for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Tuesday afternoon, no change out here in the west, staying marginal. Patch of IFR, Nunivak Island, but off the main coastline. And kind of a mixture of conditions from VFR to IFR to marginal here over the interior, with the bulk of the IFR up there in the northeast, but south of the Brooks Range. Pretty good for the mountains up there, north slope to the Arctic coast. IFR, eastern, northern Panhandle. Passes, Anatuvik, same pattern, well, with marginal VFR, lowest conditions will be, looks like north side, otherwise VFR to the south. And for the Adigan Pass, same type of forecast, marginal VFR occasionally on the northern entrance. Better, higher conditions, probably VFR through the pass and to the south. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional IFR. Same forecast for Rainy, occasional IFR throughout the day, Monday. And for windy, IFR becoming marginal, gradual improvement into the afternoon there. Probably likely will become marginal VFR in the afternoon. Isabel, though, holding IFR throughout the day. And Mentasta, marginal VFR, occasionally IFR, possibly on the southern entrance. That's where you'll find the lowest conditions. And for Tanita, VFR to start, and then some moisture slips on up in the afternoon, possibly becoming marginal. And then for Portage, IFR, pretty sure bet tomorrow. Chilkoot and White, improving IFR to maybe even VFR toward late afternoon. And freezing levels, definitely southerly winds pushing warm air northward. Obviously, we've got 6,000 to 8,000 feet here across southern Alaska. And then right along the Alaska range, drops back down to about 2,000 there over the Tanana Valley areas. And then quite a gradient here across the Panhandle from 2 to as high as 10,000 feet down across Prince of Wales Island. Icing, next system coming up, another push of moisture, so occasional widespread moderate, or an area of widespread moderate, especially terrain enhanced here as it hits the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound and up into the southern Copper River Basin. Then the boundary here, an area of isolated moderate from the upper Yukon Valley, and then really thinning out here across the Yukon Delta. Becomes a little more widespread again over the Bering Sea, Pribilofs on down toward Fox Islands, above about 3,000 feet. Just, again, isolated moderate in this zone. And for the jet stream, back upper level low here south of the Alaska Peninsula. Main jet now a little farther to the east and not quite as strong as today. Southerlies 90 knots hitting the northern panhandle, kind of a split here, 70 knots, and then the other branch across northern Bristol Bay at about 60 to 70 knots. 9,000 feet, southeast 50, that next system here tracking north-northwest. And that increased the winds, mostly off the coast, but even over the inside water areas, still up to about 40 knots, 9,000 feet. 15 to 30 knot easterlies in the central interior, 30 knots sustained along the southwest coast and the Bering Sea, up to 40 here. And much the same pattern at 3,000 feet. Turbulence-wise, moderate shock, pretty widespread along the west coast, northern Bristol Bay, and the Aleutians.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens of GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us again tonight.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks, Eric. And we've been talking about the complex gathering of information from satellites, looking down on the surface of the planet. And some of those orbits around the planet work for Alaska, and some of them don't. There's a lot of challenges with those. How can we get better imagery for the poles and specifically for Alaska?
Right. Well, today we're going to talk about a very interesting kind of satellite orbit that has potential to be real helpful for the high latitudes.
Okay.
Especially us here in Alaska. Canadians, Russians, Norwegians will all be interested in this. The satellites are not in orbit yet. Now the future is uncertain, but it's possible, and if this happens, it will be wonderful for Alaska. Okay. It's called the highly elliptical orbit.
Oh,
it's interesting. Yeah. And I think first, to help our discussion, we should get back to some of Kepler's laws and how do satellites work.
Sure.
Kepler's first law, an orbit of a planet around a sun or a weather satellite around the Earth is not necessarily a circle, it's an ellipse.
Okay.
And the highly elliptical orbit takes advantage of this aspect. We're going to put the Earth in one of the ellipse and then stretch one of the foci of the ellipse and then stretch that ellipse out real far to make it highly elliptical.
The foci is that bend part of the end of the ellipse. If you're going to stretch out a rubber band, that would be the center, kind of the stretchy part.
Yes.
Ends. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Kepler's second law says that the closer something is to the thing that it's orbiting, the faster it goes.
Okay.
We see this in the solar system, that Mercury flies around the sun real fast. Jupiter, much slower. Jupiter's further away, it's slower. Mercury's closer in, it's faster. This happens with weather satellites too. Even satellites like the International Space Station, it's pretty close to the Earth. It goes around the Earth in only 90 minutes. That thing is moving. It's only 250 miles away. So how can we take advantage of these two aspects of Kepler's laws of motion to get better weather surveillance of Alaska? And this highly elliptical orbit is going to be the approach. So we have with us today our friendly planet Earth and our simulated satellite, the lid off of this salt shaker
like
here.
Sputnik there. Yeah.
There it is. It's shiny, it's metal, it's space-worthy. And what we want to be able to do is, could you have a satellite hover over the top of the world, up over Alaska? You can't really do that. Geostationary satellites have to be over the equator.
Okay.
So how could we almost solve this? And this is the tricky part. Maybe should we tilt the Earth over?
Focus on the pole. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
So here we have the northern side of the planet, and we're going to trace out the orbit of a satellite with this salt shaker lid here. Now imagine a highly elliptical orbit. So let's put the Earth in one of the foci of the ellipse, and we'll have an imaginary foci out here. So the satellite will not go in a circle around the Earth, but will be in this long strung out ellipse. So the satellite will go...
Kind of like a racetrack.
Yes, there you go, like a racetrack. So it's an oval elliptical shape like that. And notice now that when the satellite's over here, we've got a nice view of the northern hemisphere around. There's Alaska, Russia, Canada, Greenland, all there. So that's the ellipse aspect of an orbit, Kepler's first law. The second law saying that when you're further away as a satellite, you go slower. And this we can take real advantage of. Because the way this orbit works, when the satellite goes over Antarctica here, it's going to be close to the Earth. It's going to be moving, whoosh, goes on by. And then as it comes out here, it will slow down. This increases what is known as the dwell time. The satellite will just hang here, looking for hours at Alaska and the high Arctic. And then eventually it will come around and it will accelerate and whiz around the South Pole and then come back and hang here for a while because it's further away from the planet. It goes slower. It has to. That's the laws of motion. And such like that, repeating.
Wow.
Now, the real important way to make this work is you have to have two satellites. So that while one is whipping around the pole, you've got the other one out here. And they work as a team. You could then get a series of images of Alaska that can be almost from a constant frame of reference. And you can loop them together to make movies. You can take a picture every 10 minutes, say, of Alaska and then loop it, playing it at several frames a second. You could see the clouds whiz on by. You know, the Weather Channel, weather broadcasters in the lower 48 especially can show these movie loops from the geostationary satellites. In Alaska, we've never really been able to do that very well, especially in the higher, most northern parts of the state, because those geostationary satellites are over the equator. It's not a good view. And this highly elliptical orbit whipping around the South Pole and then dwelling up here would be a way for us to get that constant frame of reference and do really good weather surveillance over the Arctic, seeing where those storms are, where they're going. Nothing quite like a movie loop of the weather in time to really illustrate what's important, what's going on.
And compared to what we have right now, we just have small windows or snapshots of what's going on with the polar orbiters. We don't have that long range view that's looking top down to give us that complete motion picture that helps us understand so much of the atmosphere at this
There's
point.
so many different kinds of satellites. Each has their advantage. Each is important, and the highly elliptical orbit satellite will also fit into that scheme. It's a nifty idea to solve an Alaskan challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. And again, kind of a satellite dream of the future to come. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. We really appreciate the information. And if you'd like to learn more about what Eric does at Dehne, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we invite you to visit the web address that you see on your screen there. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis here, continuing to show ice. Temperatures cold enough up here along the ice edge. It's continuing to expand southward at a pretty good clip and in around Wrangell Island now. And this is going to continue for the next several days while the coastline here holds a pretty much stationary status quo. Coastal water forecast here. Southeast coast, gales on the south coast tomorrow, 40 knot southeasterlies on the north coast, seas ranging from 17 feet south to a little over 20 feet there in the north. Lynn Canal, south 20 knots, gusts 35, so some gale force gusts there tomorrow with southeast 20 for Stevens Passage and 25 knot winds, good for small craft advisories for Clarence Strait. Outlook for Tuesday, much lighter winds along the coast now, south-southwest. 15 to 20 knots, but those seas still up 12 to 13 feet. Southeast 20 with seas up to 16 feet in the north coast. Southeast 15, Lynn Canal, east 15, Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories continue. Southeast 25 knots with 8-foot seas. North Gulf Coast, east winds on the east side here. 40 knots tomorrow, that next system rolling up, so those will be coming back up to 40 knots in the afternoon, 20-foot seas. East 30 knots, Prince William Sound, 7-foot seas. Small craft advisories here for the western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, all 25 knots, north 20 knots north of the Forelands. And for Tuesday, northeast 20 knots, northern Cook Inlet, and 30 knot winds here south of the Forelands, 45 knot easterlies now back into Kamishak Bay. Same thing for the Barren Islands, 28-foot seas, east 30 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, down to 20 knots from the southeast here for the east side there, and Prince William Sound winds are down to 20 knots from the east, seas 4 feet. Bristol Bay, southeast winds 30 knots tomorrow, that wind pattern all the way down to Cape Sarachef, and then Cape Sarachef all the way up to Sitkinak, southeast 25, seas 13 to 14 feet. Small craft advisories here, east side of Kodiak Island. Outlook for Tuesday, big increase in those winds. We've got easterlies 45 knots for Shelikof Strait, southeast 45 here on the east side, and then Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southwest at 25, north-northwest at 30, coming across the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay winds northeast 40 knots with 9-foot seas. Fox Islands tomorrow, 30 to 45 knot winds from the north to northwest, or northeast to northwest, seas as high as 27 feet. Central Aleutians north, 35 to 45. seas up to 26 feet, and winds slowly diminishing, but holding still 25 knots out in the west there with 17-foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, lighter winds out west, north 20 there until about Kiska Island, over toward Adak, northwest at 25. Central Aleutians, north to northwest, 25 to 30. It's definitely lighter winds, much lighter winds here for the Fox Islands, north to northwest, 15 to 25, with those seas running 8 to 14 feet. Southwest coast, storm warnings tomorrow. Storms really just about all of the eastern Bering Sea here, 55 knots for the Pribilofs, seas up to 24 feet. Northeast 40, St. Lawrence Island, and gales also out for Norton Sound with seas at 7 feet. Next day, winds come down. Small craft advisories here south of Nunivak Island, northeast 30, 9-foot seas. 25 out of the north of the Pribilofs with 12-foot seas. Northeast 35 here for the northern Bering Sea, right up into the Bering Strait with seas as high as 14 to 17 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, actually eastern central coast here, kind of a variable easterly wind, a light easterly drift here at 10 knots, picking up to 15 on the west side. And then small craft advisories, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. South of Cape Thompson to Wales, gales, northeast 35 knots. Those hold through Tuesday, those 35-knot gales there for the Chukchi Sea. East 25 or east at 30 from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. 20-knot winds on the western coast. And then kind of a weak trough passing by to the north there. So that's going to make for a light southwest breeze on the central coast. Otherwise, easterlies at 15 over to demarcation point. Outlook again tonight, rain moderate to heavy continues, stays wet here for the North Gulf Coast into the Copper River Basin, south central Alaska. Showers, Kodiak, upslope areas of the Alaska Peninsula, still moderate amounts of rain. Northern Panhandle, central north coast, you'll see the best chance of rain there. Gusty winds, strong winds, high wind warning St. Lawrence Island through tomorrow or tomorrow night. Storm warnings, eastern Bering, continue through tomorrow, as we can see. Rain and snow along this boundary here, depending on your elevation and your location here, either side of the front. Next system bringing more wind and rain, gale force winds here up into the coast, and possible storm force winds, and then better the next day.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.